Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is going to be a tutorial on how I modify my book of days. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate any views and the opportunity to share this with you. This is not something that was an original idea by me. I learned this from Colorado Cross Stitcher. She is, as far as I know, the person who had this idea to bind the Book of Days and give it a little bit more meat and substance. So I hope that you will stick around and see how this works. So you have a couple options for how you can get your books bound. So they come more as like a pamphlet booklet. So the spiral isn't here. It's just a plain cardstock cover, and then it's stapled in the middle. So my 2022 book, I took to Staples and had them cut the edge off so that it wasn't bound anymore. And then they were able to punch the holes for me, print a couple extra sheets, and put it all together. A bit of a caveat with that is that when they did that for me, the pages were sticking out past here. So when you get the book, they're 8.5 by 11 size pages that are bound. And when you cut off this edge, you then are left with a book that's slightly smaller than 8.5 by 11. It's a little bit more narrow. And so when they printed and bound standard 8.5 by 11 sheets, they ended up being a little bit longer, right? Because they don't have that edge taken away. So when I got my book back from them, I did have to bring it home and chop off a small portion of the edge just to get the book to be the right size and not have pages sticking out. My pages do, well, they're pretty close. They're not completely even, but they do, they're pretty close. So I kind of put my book together, threw some pages in. I have these, I don't know that I have a blank page of these to show you. This page is probably the best. So I just went on printablepaper.net and used their PDF file to print. These are, I think, like they're 1-inch squares. They have lots of different options. And then also these college ruled pages. So I initially had Staples print these off for me. They didn't bind them with the book. I think they were a little bit confused about what I was asking for. So when I got home, I had the book bound without these pages in them, and then the extra pages, but they did have the holes punched. And then, like I said, I had to trim off the edge. I'll show you that, and then get them in the book. So part of the reason why I wanted to show you this tutorial is because when I first had these books that were bound like this, I wanted to modify them from back in my planner days, paper planner days, and it was a little bit daunting. I was afraid I was going to ruin something at first, and then once I did it a few times, I realized it's not so scary, and it's actually pretty simple. There is a little bit of a risk if you keep, changing this out and bending this, the binding back and forth a few times, like it could wear and break. So you just have to be careful and cognizant of that. I'm fairly certain that if you went to Staples or another home office supply store that does binding like this, they would probably sell you just the coil if you needed it. And you can also purchase these on Amazon as well. I even saw on Amazon that you can buy like a presentation booklet where you can get the coil, a set of 50 pages of punched paper, and a front and a back with the clear cover protectors. So this is my 2023 Book of Days. This came from Colorado Cross Stitcher. I emailed Sherry directly, like she mentioned in her YouTube video, that I wanted a bound version. So she's selling these as the booklet, and then also, I don't know if they're still available to come bound, but she sold them this way with some pages added in. So her pages that she had added in were these cardstock pages at the back. So they're just the blank cardstock pages. There's, I haven't even counted yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these are really nice, thick, heavy cardstock pages, which are great. And then I added in some of the pages that I had printed for when I had gone to Staples to have my 2022 bound. So that would be these, the same that I showed you, the college ruled and the squares. So I have not really done much with my 2023 yet. I've been really working on, for those of you who have seen my Floss 2 videos, you know that I recently purchased my 2022 Book of Days back in October. So I've been, it was around the same time that I decided I was going to use the 2023 Book of Days as my 2023 yearbook. Being a relatively new cross stitcher, I was still working out what I wanted my, tracking to look like. And so I tried a journal, but I felt like with a journal, there was a lot of, I didn't have a template or anything for it. And so there was a lot of writing in and then writing what I wanted to write. I tried a digital planner. The concept of that I really loved. I like having a digital pen to write on the tablet. I just found that I wasn't good about having my tablet with me always. And so I wasn't able to keep track of that. I felt like with a digital planner, I couldn't get my hands on the multitude of ways that you can keep track of things, right? So there's like the weekly view, and then there's the monthly view, and then there's a bunch of different trackers, and it felt like I was putting things a lot of different places, and I was having a hard time visualizing where things were, and it's just not quite as simple as a hard book like this. So as I've been working on catching up my planner, my Book of Days for 2022, I even put a few finishes from 2021. I started cross-stitching in November of 21, so I got those finishes in and just kind of trying to organize my finishes in order when I started different projects from all the different places I had been tracking them and kind of trying to get myself caught up. I really started using it the end of October, so tracking every day what I was stitching on, and then also tracking, when I had started new projects. November looks a little bit better. You can see I don't have yesterday's filled in, but otherwise, within a day or two, I'm catching up with what I've stitched. And I'm even keeping track of when I did my YouTube videos, so that helps me know what I need to talk about when I'm planning my next video. And then I got in my pictures of my 2021 finishes. I have a Kodak zinc printer that prints these little 2x3 pictures, just to have a quick snapshot of my finishes as a commemorative thing, and then what my advanced planning is. So I've got a few retreats coming up that I'm going to next year, and then into my 2022 finishes. So I realized that I was using a lot of more papers than I thought, even just to wrap up 2022. And so I decided that I need to add actually a few more pages to my 2022 yearbook. And also I want to reorganize and add some more pages to 2023. So I thought this would be a really great opportunity to show you how I do that, how simple it really truly is, and encourage you to modify these to really make them your own. So what you'll need is fairly simple. I have a 500 pack of printer paper that is made for binding. So it is a 43 round hole coil punched paper, and it's made for copiers, laser printers. I found this on Amazon, and it is a 20 weight thickness of paper. So this is not like that nice cardstock that came with this book. This is more like a standard printer paper weight. From this blank paper, I think I showed this on my last video, so you can see this here with the holes. I went ahead and printed more of the lined paper because I feel like as for journaling and writing down, making lists, writing down notes, commemorating different events, I wanted more space to do those types of things. So I went ahead and printed this college ruled paper again from printablepaper.net. I'm not going to show that part of it because everybody's printer is going to be different. So you'll have to test a sample out, line up your paper to make sure that you're getting, you know, the right edge. Your paper is printing the right way up so that the top is to the right of your binding paper, and then that your back is also printing appropriately. So you'll have to modify that for your printer. My printer is a manual dual-sided, so I had to print one side and then flip them over and then reprint to get the backs in. But one tip for that is to mark like your top and your side of your paper when you put it in your printer. Print something out, see how it prints, and then that will help you figure out how you have to load your paper to get it to print in the format that you need it to. And then, so that's the paper or whatever things you want to insert. And then you need some type of paper cutter. I like my Fiskars just standard scrapbook paper cover. The other thing that I wanted to note about this paper, you can really do this with anything, but what I found when I went on Amazon, I thought, you know, I would do this enough potentially to purchase a punch. I have a 3-hole punch, but when I looked at the punches that are specific to this type of binding, they're quite expensive. I think the cheapest one I found was at least $100, and so that for the cost of the paper pack, which was, it was maybe $10. I felt like this was a much more economical option. The downside is I'm not going to have like the access to the thicker cardstock, but I'm also fairly certain that if you took something like that to a home office store, they would potentially punch it for you and charge you, or have the paper there that they could punch for you. So that's always an option. The goal of this is to really talk about how you can undo your binding to shuffle things around the way you want them, and then rebind it fairly simply and have it function again. So both of these books I have unbound, put paper in, and rebound, and they work great. They open, they fold over nicely, none of the edges get stuck. So I've been really happy with the product. So, all right. So the first step in all of this is to make sure that you're cutting the paper to the size that you need it to be. So you need to take, and it's a sort of a time, it just takes a little bit of time with these paper cutters. At least the one that I have, it only cuts a few sheets at a time. So get my ruler out, make sure that it's open and straight so that I'm getting as accurate a measurement as possible. And then I know you probably can't even see there we go. I know that on my ruler it's really faint, but I've marked this 7 3/4 line, and I am 90% sure that is the size that I want. So if I line it up here, oh, I'm wrong. Okay. So scratch that. Let's cut the paper after we open the book, because then we'll know exactly what measurement we need. So where, it's probably also important to consider that where that particular person that cut your book and bound it for the first time, where they chose to cut the book is going to influence the size of your pages. So it's probably not a bad idea really for us to pull this out, measure this paper so that we get a close as possible exact cut. So all you need to do here is at the top of your binding, it's going to be folded over to prevent it from uncoiling. All you need to do, and you can I do this with my fingers, you can definitely use like a pair of pliers, be gentle with it. You just got to get it open enough so that you can encourage it through. And then all you need to do is twist it to get it out. So you're gonna get a little bit of a catch here on the back end as you back this first one out and around. It's just gonna kind of gotta get over the edge of the paper. And then once you're out, I'm just like pulling it down here. Once you're out, you should be good to go. And then it's just a matter of uncoiling it. Spin, spin, spin. It's not taking a lot of effort at all on my part, holding it kind of even, right? So that the pages, the holes are lined up so it's not preventing me from uncoiling it. And I know the binding systems with the big machines, like they have a much easier way to do this, and that's wonderful, but you can't beat the price of this. I feel like we need some like elevator music or something here just to get this uncoiled. Almost there. All right, so I'm uncoiled, and I can set my coil aside. Now, I would encourage you just to be cautious, right? Like, I know particularly for me, the way that these books are formatted, there's not really a place in between each month to put pages. If there was, that would be amazing. I would totally do that. But I want to be able to see, I know that I want to be able to see my calendar layout all in one page or one view if I lay both pages, the book flat. So there's not really an option to put anything between the months. So I know that I can go all the way to the back of my book and set this aside so that I don't mess these up, get them out of order while I'm working. So I'm going to set those aside, and I'm back to the pages that I added. So I've got some notebook pages and then my square pages. And I know I want my whips. This is like the last page of the planner. It's got a chart on the back, and then this nice grid space, which is really actually nice. It would be fun to photocopy this and add more pages of this too. That's another idea, that you could scan this and print some working copies of that for use in your book only, for personal use. But I know I want to keep my cardstock stuff at the end because that's where my whips are probably going to go. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I want them before all of my notes. I don't know. You can decide what you want to do with that. I'll have to think about that while we're working here. But if I don't like it, I can uncoil it and redo it. That's the beauty of this. So I got a bend here in one of these. I was stopping to measure. Okay. I'm getting these out of order again. Setting those aside. So I'm going to take one of these pieces of cardstock. I think that'll be the easiest way because I know that these were fitting well in the book. And go from my cut line over to here. And it looks like it's like 8 5/8 is really where I want to cut my paper. Just check that again. Yeah, that looks pretty close. Well, I would take that back. I think I want to do it on the 21 millimeter mark. Centimeter mark. So let's try 21 centimeters and see where we get. So I can set this aside and grab a few sheets. I would only do 2 or 3 at the most at a time. A few sheets of my paper that I printed. And then I'm going to line up my binding edge with where I want to cut. Try and get when you're doing multiple pieces, right, like you want to make sure that they don't move on you so that they're all straight. And I said 21 millimeters. Okay. And then we can cut it and see where we're at. So taking off just a little bit of that binding, or of that extra, to make it fit. Now I'm going to go back and see how I did. So I don't know if you can tell, but that is pretty darn close. That's looking pretty good. So I'm happy with that measurement now. So I can go through and just cut all of my pieces. Okay. So I have all of my pages cut. You can see I'm not 100% accurate. It is a little hard to cut from a standing position over, but they look pretty good. And I think once they're bound, you won't really even notice that they're a little bit off. So I can put my ruler away and then recycle my little pieces of confetti paper here. And then we're ready to put our book back together. All right. So hopefully speeded up the cutting process. Still working on my video editing skills. So that was my plan. So hopefully that works out for me. I believe I printed about 23 pages. That's maybe a little much, and I know I want to add a few more to my 2022 book of days. So I'm going to take a few out. Thinking an arbitrary number of 7. I feel like 7 might be good for the rest of the year for me for the next book. And I can always print more. Okay. Now I have to decide, like we talked about earlier, where I want everything to fall. So let's see. Okay, so here's the last page. December is here, and then this is like the advanced planning for 24. Gosh, I can't believe it's almost 2023. So now I have to decide what I want to do. And I kind of like the idea of having my whips closer to my calendar, or my finishes closer to my calendar, so that I don't have to page through my notes, you know, retrospectively. So I'm going to put the blank cardstock pages next. You can choose to do whatever you would like, of course. I feel like I'm going to use my notebook pages. I originally had these, the square ones, because I thought I would do like more like tables or tracking, or even to like document my whips or my finishes. I don't know that I would use them for that, and for sure not for my finishes, because my 2023 came with these really great heavy-duty cardstock ones. So that's what those are slated for. So I'm going to put my squares at the back, because I think I will use these next pages more like a notebook. These I might use to make a table, or sometimes when I'm making like project bags or those types of things, I like to have some straight lines to like draw out my measurements, just to kind of pre-plan how big I need to cut my fabric and those kinds of things, because I do kind of play around with designing my own project bags and those kinds of things. So I'm going to put my squares next. Now this sheet, this is the one with the like alphabet chart and the special chart on the one side, and then this like graph paper. Kind of like the idea of having it at the end. I kind of like the idea of having it back at the beginning. I don't know. I think it's a nice end cap. We'll leave it how Sherry had it built. And then the back cover, of course, and then the plastic covers on both sides. So once I'm confident that I have everything how I want it, I'm a little bit nervous now that I'm gonna be a little thick, but we will see how it goes. So the key is, right, that this coil's got to fit all of these things nicely. So I might have to take a few notebook pages out, but we will give her a try. So you want to lay your book nice and flat so that you can see through all of your holes, and then you're just gonna go backwards. So this is the right end. The end that I pulled up, or I bent to make it a little bit more straight. And again, this first one is going to be the hardest. So it's just kind of feeling out till you get all the way through to the back, and it's a little bit awkward. This coil doesn't have a lot of distance from where the hole is to the edge of the paper, and so that's really what I'm getting hung up here, is just having enough space to get around. And because this end is bent, I'm just having a little bit of trouble getting it through this bigger stack of paper. Okay, so now I'm through that first hole. And because I picked it up, I'm just gonna make sure all of my pages are lined up. It is possible to accidentally miss a page in here if one gets out of sorts. Because my book is pretty well cut and straight, I think I'll be okay, but that's just something to keep in mind. You can always, if you miss something, you can always undo it and try again. So we're gonna see how this goes back together. I think again, I'm just having a little bit of trouble because it's so thick here. And I don't know how well this is going to lay quite this thick. I added probably at least double the amount of pages that are actually in the book originally. So, though the coil is not made for the book, the coil is just the size that it's chosen based on the size of pages you need. So you could potentially ask for a bigger coil. The key is that the coil that you buy and the pages, the way that they're punched, match the number of holes. So I made sure to count my holes and purchase paper for binding that's pre-punched to match the number of holes that I have so that they all line up. I think that I could benefit from making this a little bit straighter, and I think I'll have a little bit of an easier time. Oh yeah, here we go. Try to bring it a little bit closer so you can see. So I just move it into each hole, make sure it's straight there, and just kind of guide it through. Okay. And just keep going like that. I am getting a little bit of, again, because of this distance here, I'm getting a little bit of a bend. So just be gentle, be careful with these corners. You might get a little bit of wear on them from that coil rubbing up against them as it goes around. Okay, and then I'm just going to work my way up through all the holes, readjusting as I need to. What I find sometimes too is I get a little bit more grip and spin if I can kind of guide it, do like a quarter turn, get it through the hole, and then spin. It seems to, for whatever reason, it seems to wanna move through my book straight again. I'm out of line here. Eee. There we go. I think when I spin from down here, like when I spin up here, I'm like pulling everything along. There's a lot of friction. And when I spin from down here, it kind of catches up the coil where it's a little bit tighter down underneath this gap there, the extra paper on the edge. I'm quite nervous. Do you see how thick this is? I'm nervous that it's not going to open and wrap well. I'm just gonna have to see how that plays out and then play with it. So I'm probably not going to completely bend my coil back into like its original position until I get a feel for if I have too much paper in here. This is a little extreme. I've really kind of turned this more into like a yearbook and a notebook. But I like to have my stuff all in one place. Otherwise I have like checklist, to-do lists floating around. So I am one of those people who I will start working on something and then I'll realize I should make like cleaning, for example, right? Like I'll start cleaning and I'll be like, I need a list of all the things that I need to do. And so I'll stop and make myself a list. And the first things I add to my list are the things that I've already done so that I can immediately cross them off and get credit for those things and then move on to the other things that I need to do. So I like that, that sense of accomplishment that you get from checking things off. And so I like to have a list and kind of get all of the things that are floating around in my head down on paper so that my brain doesn't have to manage them. We're real close here. All right, this is pretty tight. We're helping this last guy come up and over the edge. This edge of the coil might need a little help once we're done there, just to make sure that it's bent back so that it will stay in place. But first we need to check and see how this is going to work. So it's pretty tight. I am able to page through it. I'm getting a little bit of catch here on the edges. But I feel like I'm doing pretty good. It does help to kind of move it around and then bring it back over. If you notice here, this is one important thing when you are deciding if you want to get a bound book or not, is to think about you lose this inside margin. So this is printed like a booklet. And so it's printed to be fairly close together here on the inside because usually there's just this fold of paper here. And so the margins are set different so that it looks even when it's printed as a booklet. So it's just something to consider. Like if you're a perfectionist and like losing this little bit of your inside pages will bother you, that is something just to consider if you decide, when you're trying to decide if you want to bind it or not, because you will lose a little bit of this margin. And that's just the nature of taking something that's meant to be bound, or meant to be bound normal, like as a booklet, and turning it into something that has coil binding. If this was built for coil binding, the printer would make sure to have the margins set so that there would be space for the coil without it, you know, infringing on whatever is on the pages. So it doesn't really bother me all that much. If I make things too perfect for me, then I'm afraid to use them, and so I have to kind of, it's okay for me. I much prefer the functionality of being able to fold it in half. That's how I like to work a lot when especially when I'm not doing the calendar pages, like if I'm just using the note pages. All right, so I'm pretty happy with what I've got here. I'm a little bit nervous. Oh. I've unspun my back here. I just lost my back cover there. Okay, there, now it's right. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with the thickness of this. I definitely don't, I think this is sticking out, right, because it's so thick. Let's see what I have in, how many pages. 25 lined pages, and then a handful of these other 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave it for now, but consider going back. I'm a little bit nervous. So I have a total of 32 printer weight pages, and then I have what did we say? 2, 3, 4, 5 cardstock pages. I'm a little bit nervous that once we get to, those are in addition to what was already a part of the book, when I start adding thickness for my project cards and pictures of my finishes, it's going to add to the thickness, and I don't know how that's going to work. So I'm going to think about that. I can always, that's what's really great about this, is I can always unbind it. So then all I'm doing is bending this little piece down here so that it looks similar to what my piece here looks like, right? So that as I'm moving my book around, I don't have what happened to me when I didn't have this, which was the back came around and then it was outside, this top piece was outside the hole. So this little guy will catch that from going all the way around and getting kind of slowly unbinding or unwrapping. All right, so that is my 2023 Honking Book of Days. It's like super sized. I hope that this was helpful for you and it encourages you to modify your own books to meet your needs. I definitely want to give a special shout out to Sherry Colorado Cross Stitcher for having this idea. I think her addition of binding it and adding extra pages into it really changed my desire or perspective wanting to have this book as opposed to finding another method for tracking and using this book as a yearbook for all things needlework cross stitch. So I thank you for her for that original idea, and I hope this just kind of helps supplement the way that you choose to use your book, and that there are some options out there for you to bring additional pages in beyond what Sherry supplies. Or if you I'll link her shop below where I was able to purchase this from. There's lots of needlework stores that are selling this from Needlework Press, so you have a few options for where you can find this, but please take a minute to check out Sherry's and consider ordering from Colorado Cross Stitcher and supporting her with that idea. All right, I think that's all I have for now. Thanks for hanging in with me. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again next time.